The universe holds two kinds of energy, the kind we've studied for decades, and the kind we've barely dared to name. Science calls it resonance. Match a frequency closely enough, and even something invisible becomes impossible to ignore. Some call that manifestation. Some call it faith. This team called it a hypothesis worth risking their lives to test. This is the case file of Thornfield Manor, and the night 4 graduate researchers finally got an answer they weren't prepared for. 2 a.m. Every device was in place, night vision cameras through every room, audio recorders spaced every 20 feet, EMF meters logging in real time. Mira sat bound to a chair in the manor's old drawing room, not as a prisoner, but as bait. Owen sat across from her, EMF detector in hand, watching for the first spike. Outside the room, Priya and Devon tracked energy readings through the halls, building a live map of the manor's cold spots. Beep, beep. Priya's meter jumped hard near the old kitchen. She swallowed against a dry throat and moved toward the sound. 40 years ago, the last family who owned Thornfield fled in the night and never returned. People from 4 neighboring towns still wouldn't say the manor's name after dark. Investigators braver than this team had gone in before and come out unable to describe what they'd seen. This place didn't have a reputation. It had a body count of ruined nerves. Priya's meter screamed loudest near the kitchen window. Across the manor, Devon tracked a matching spike to the garden just behind it, the same energy from 2 directions converging on one point. Then, just as fast, both signals dropped, and Owen's meter in the drawing room shrieked to life instead. Owen didn't hesitate. He mixed a few drops of sedative into a glass of water and had Mira drink it, watching her carefully as her guard, physical and otherwise, began to lower. The moment her body weakened, something in the house noticed. Whispers rustled through the empty halls. A camera toppled off its mount. Every instrument in the manor began beeping at once. Somewhere outside, an owl's call cut through air that sounded like two-headed debris. Myra's neck rolled in a slow, natural a voice that wasn't hers began to rise. "What do you want?" Owen asked, steadying his voice. A low, ragged growl answered first, then slower, almost human again. "We're here to help you," Owen said. "We're not your enemy. We just want to understand what happened to you. Whatever you need to say, we're listening." The presence behind Myra's eyes studied him for a long moment. Then it began to speak, not in scattered fragments, but in a clear, aching testimony, like something finally being said aloud for the first time in 100 years. "They took me from my own wedding morning," the voice said. "The man whose name I wore never once lifted my veil to look at me. To him and his friends, I was a plaything for the house. Brought out every night once he'd had enough wine. Danced in front of his sons like a toy that had learned to move. I had a daughter," the voice continued. "For her sake, I never resisted. I danced every night without complaint, because I thought obedience would keep her safe. It didn't. When she was 12, they came for her too. I swore what happened to me would never happen to her," the voice said. "So I took an axe to every one of them. I was 1 against 4. It didn't matter. For a moment, it didn't matter at all. They overpowered me before it was finished. And then they used that same axe on both of us. They buried us here, in this house. My daughter, right in front of me." The voice broke, grief cracking through centuries of rage. "That day I was weak. I am not weak anymore. I have made every one of them pay, piece by piece." Then, abruptly, it laughed. A sound with too many edges to belong to any living throat. "We're going to make sure people know what happened to you," Owen said carefully. "But you have to let your daughter rest now. This isn't your world to hold onto anymore. We're not your enemy. We never were." Priya's meter spiked again, sharp and sudden. She signaled Devon and they moved together toward it, deeper into the manor, until the needle jumped violently and a small, localized whirlwind rose directly in front of them. Every instrument in the building screamed at once. Owen sprinted toward the sound, following the readings. "She said they buried them here," Priya said. "I think this is the spot." They marked the location and, once the activity settled enough to move safely, began to dig. Beneath the floorboards, they found 2 sets of remains. a woman, and beside her a child. Preserved fragments of a wedding bangle still clung to one wrist. The team arranged a proper burial and formally reported the remains, cracking open a decades-old missing persons case no one had ever solved. With her story finally heard and her daughter laid to rest beside her, the presence in the house went quiet. The readings that had spiked all night flattened into silence. Mira took a week to recover from the sedation and the toll of the night, but the case, Thornfield Manor, file closed, became the centerpiece of the team's published research. Weeks later, the four of them sat in the university library, deep in research for their next paper, a formal thesis on what they called unclassified negative energy signatures, built on the theory that ghosts, spirits, and hauntings were really just one narrow slice of something far larger science hadn't named yet. Mira had been buried in the same book for 3 days straight. "I'm reading an account about something called an Ifrit Jinn," she said. "The records suggest this isn't folklore. It's treated as a documented historical event. Whoever wrote this claims the summoning ritual used to call it was last recorded in a book almost 250 years ago, kept in a royal library at Chandapur. You want to go looking for a 200-year-old summoning manual?" Devon said. "In the same kind of house that already almost got us killed?" "You know that's the job," Mira said. "Half of what we understand about the pyramids or Kailash came from someone willing to go looking where nobody else would." Priya backed her without hesitation. Devon, outvoted, gave in with a sigh. The following week, the team arrived at the crumbling Chandapur estate, silent except for pigeons nesting in the rafters, every hallway telling its own story of decades of ruin. They searched room by room for anything resembling a library, following the layout described in Myra's book, but room after room turned up nothing but dust, cobwebs, and collapsed furniture. Eventually they reached what had clearly once been a royal bedchamber. Little remained but a grand, decaying bed frame, and, catching Myra's eye, an elaborately carved mirror large enough to reflect the entire room. She reached out to touch the frame's carving, and at that exact moment, Owen, moving too fast behind her, collided into her, sending her stumbling straight into the glass. The mirror didn't shatter. It swung inward, like a door. Did they just find a hidden room no one has opened in centuries, or something far more dangerous waiting behind it? Find out in part 2. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Subscribe us on YouTube and drop your own real-life stories in the comments. Yours could be our next case file.